Hello, my name is José and today I will give you a small talk about the hypermobility versus hyperextension, which always confuses students that I have in teacher trainings or workshops. They always would like to know, okay, what to do and what is the difference. So I hope I can clarify that in this talk. So hypermobility is something different than hyperextension. First, I will explain what is hypermobility. So if you have your skeleton and around each joint you have ligaments, tendons, and we call it now fascia, which is a general word for all the connective tissue. But the ligaments surrounding each joint, when you're hypermobile, they can be soft. Not all the joints have to have hypermobility. You can also have only in certain places hypermobility. So that depends on each person. So if you have it all over the body, that means that the ligaments surrounding the joint are quite loose, so to say, not very strong. They're very flexible. We can say it like that because that's the sensation you have when you're hypermobile. So the function of ligaments is to keep the joints together. So they bind one piece of bone together with another one to make it a strong structure, that you can still move your body in each joint, but that your bones just do not pop out like right away. But that can happen when you're hypermobile because it's just too loose. So the question then often is, okay, can I practice Yin Yoga, for example? And I say, yes, you can, but as we are working as well on the ligaments surrounding the joint, because Yin Yoga is about stimulating the fascia in a physical sense. So when you are in a pose, then I always advise people, okay, maybe do not go too deep too fast so that you kind of learn how it feels in your body, and also don't hold the pose that long in the beginning so that you can experiment with how it feels during the practice, but also more important, after the practice. And when you feel, oh, I'm too loose, doesn't feel good, then maybe scratch some poses that you're doing that create that uneasiness, or do them less amount of time, or don't do them every day. For example, it is very important for someone who has hypermobility to also practice yang styles of yoga because they strengthen the muscles, and the muscles then work as a shock breaker. So they can kind of take the impact off the joint. So it's very important if you're hypermobile to have strong muscles, because otherwise the impact of the movement comes straight to the ligaments that are already flexible, and that you can hurt your joint. In general, it's important to use your muscles when you're moving, but especially when you're hypermobile. So yes, you can do yin, but you have to take it easy and be experimental about it. I would not do a lot of yin. I would really recommend to also practice yang yoga to strengthen your muscles. Then what is hyperextension? The words look similar, but it's completely something else. So if I take the example of, for example, the knee and the elbow, when we straighten our arm completely, if I straighten my arm completely, there are sometimes people who have hyperextension. I do not have that, but that the arm, the lower arm, kind of points out in this direction. So you have a really strong angle here. So if I show that on this skeleton, what happens is you have this protruding bony part of the ulna, and here you have the humerus bone, and you can see here that there's a little dent in there where this part of the ulna disappears in. So the moment this person would straighten their arms, if it's not tension that is stopping them here of muscles or the ligaments on the top part, but this person wants to straighten their arm completely, then you can see this person is actually hyperextended. It is the reason, it can be variable, by the way, because this head of the ulna is very small, or this dent in the humerus is very deep, so that the bone can disappear in that dent. or any combination of variations of bone shapes are possible that creates this hyperextension. So it has nothing to do with weak ligaments or hypermobility. This has to do with your shape of the bone. So people who practice, and the same happens with the knee. So when you straighten the knee, it can be that sometimes there is this little, the tibia goes way back, so to say, and you can see this bulging out a little bit. So there's this little dent in the knee. So is it safe for those people to straighten their arms and legs completely out? Because normally when you practice, for example, a yang style of yoga and you hold your downward facing dog, and those people would straighten their arms or straighten their legs, you would see that they're hyperextended. And most of the time, the teachers advise you to micro bend. So you bend a little bit your arm. But you don't have to do that all the time. Because when you're holding downward facing dog for like 5 breaths or so, you're being static. If you're moving, flowing from one pose to another, I would advise, yes, to microbend a little bit, because when you microbend, you use your muscles. And then the impact goes to the muscle and not to the joint. But if you're being static, like for example in yin yoga, or when you're breathing in a pose for like 5 breaths, you can extend your legs or your arms completely, because otherwise the person who is has hyperextension is all the time working on their strength all the time and never allowing them to kind of hang into the pose, because downward facing dog can also be used as a resting place to kind of stretch and open up the chest and to allow your arms to lengthen. So when you tell your student then all the time to micro bend, they're still using force, muscular force. So they're not actually enjoying the opening of that pose. So important is, and that I want to stress it out, when you have hyperextension, if you're doing a passive pose, you can straighten out your arms or your legs completely. But when you're in movement, then yes, micro bend a little bit so that your muscles absorb the impact and it doesn't go to the joint. I hope this has clarified something. And if not, leave a comment or let me know. Thanks.